We have some people wearing the 100 RD t-shirt on the stand there, so you can talk to them during the break. So I work with low-income kids, and the thing with low-income kids is that information is scarce to them. Progressive information, you understand? They are recycling what grandmothers told them, neighbors are saying. They're living in neighborhoods that is crazy. I remember doing one sex education session with them, and one of them asked a question, that can a 6-year-old who is sleeping around be pregnant? And I looked at them and said, a 6-year-old cannot be sleeping around. You mean a 6-year-old that someone is molesting? So for kids who grow up in neighborhoods like that, the way you went, they don't know it, right? So part of my responsibility is to build enough relationship for them to keep coming to ask questions. So 2 days ago, I'm sitting in my office. This amazing 14-year-old walks into my office. And I'm wondering what she came in for. And she goes, Mrs. Bangwell, I need to talk to you. I said, okay, let me hear you. And she says, I am 14. I haven't started seeing my period. I hear I should have started seeing my period. What should I do? So I'm taken aback because I'm like, we've achieved a milestone. She got up from her class, came to my office to have that conversation. That's a milestone for me. And so I'm trying to take it all in, and she says, I have a white discharge that keeps coming out. What is it? And so I take the time to tell her that I started seeing my period at 15. Now I know why I had to start at 15, because I'm meeting enough girls who are not starting early and they think something is wrong. And so I said, well, I started mine at 15, and it comes when it comes. It doesn't happen for everyone in the same way at the same time. And I said the discharge is a normal part of your body as well. Your body is cleansing itself. I asked her, does it itch? What color is it? To know whether this is a UTI or something. And she says no. I said, so don't worry. All right, it's nothing. You see that conversation? Let me show you another way it would have gone. So she tells her classmate she can't see her period. So there's something we can do about it. If you just started having sex now, period is going to come. Because she's 14. So every time an adult is not talking to children, that's the kind of information we expose them to. So I want to start today by telling you that young people have questions. And quite contrary to what we believe, young people have questions they want to ask. The question is, are adults in a posture to hear them? So when they see that an adult is not in a position that they can trust you enough to ask, they go and ask somebody else. So it's not that these young people are not talking, it's that you're not someone who listens. So, but here's the thing, when adults, I like to say trusted adults, because it's not every adult they should talk to. So when trusted adults are not talking, they give an opportunity for other people to talk to them. They give opportunity to celebrities to talk to them. I hope you know that during teenage years, people think that celebrities are not human. They believe they are perfect. They go with every single thing they say. Otherwise, there is no reason that children will go to school on a particular day without bra, without pants, just because Naira Marley said so. Do you get the idea? So since you're not talking, we're now listening to Naira Marley. And Naira Marley is saying it's okay to sleep with a mom and her daughter as well. So the next generation is waking up to say, well, maybe sex is not such a big deal. Maybe it is something adults make a big deal of. It's nothing really. But they always get incomplete information from those sources. For instance, those sources don't tell them how there's a high prevalence of HIV in children age 15 and 24. When those people are posting on social media, they don't put that part of the conversation. They just say, do it if it feels good. And there's a new one. If it doesn't hurt anyone, do it. What about if it hurts you? It doesn't hurt anyone, but it's going to hurt you. So what happens is when we are not standing in a place where we can hear children, they don't get the quality information that is balanced, that is seeing further into the future and protects them. So when we are not talking, they're listening to music videos and the messaging, they're listening to celebrities, and then they're listening to Google. Google is the most dangerous place for children to get sex education. Do you agree? Because anybody puts content there as long as it suits them. So a few years ago, I came across a research that said that women that have low hair, women with low hair have low self-esteem. I mean, I was blown away. So, but it wasn't hard. I said, let me see who funded the research. It was a hair cream company. So it explains it. But our children don't know that there's an agenda for about every information that makes it out there. They don't. But here's the other thing. We are part of the problem as parents. We are part of the problem. And I'm going to show you how. So many parents in this room are not providing any form of sex education. If a man touches you, you're going to get pregnant. It's not sex education. Because their brother has touched them. Their father has touched them. A teacher has touched them. Enough men have touched them along the way. Right? So it's incomplete. It's not even correct. Some of us are so scared of not talking that we lie in the process. They ask you, where do babies come from? You say they come from God. Like, really? God sent an email, said receive it, and you received it. Not correct at all. So, we're not saying enough, and then we're lying to them. And so this is what happens. They go to that girl in school. Each one of us had a classmate that seemed to know more than everybody. And everybody circled around them. Now, looking back, you realize how foolish they were, right? But at that time, they were the sport of the moment. So when mommy says things like, the baby came from God, auntie is in class waiting for them to go say, let me tell you how it works. And then they start to pass on junk after junk after junk. And your child comes home and thinks you are dumb. So they start to think that you're not the smart one. Because when you're a teenager, you don't think it through. You don't think about it comprehensively. It's very narrow, your perspective. You don't realize that your parents have been teenagers. It doesn't even occur to you that your parents were teenagers. It doesn't also occur to you that the teenager that is talking to you, both of you are in the same boat at the same time, so they cannot know more than your parents. But because parents are not talking, it's easy for them to think that their classmates are smarter. Some of the things we believe even about puberty and how young people gravitate towards their peers during their phases of puberty is questionable. I would like to do that research again when parents are present, having conversations with their kids to see whether children will still gravitate towards their peers when parents are present like they would when parents are not present. So right now everybody says when teenage years come, they gravitate towards their peers, they choose their peers over their parents. I would like to have an experiment where we have parents that are involved and talking on one end. Let's see if their children will lose it. Like I would like to interview Mrs. Ogunkomi, who is present and available to our teenage kids. Then I'll look at another parent who is complaining. And then we'll compare whether it is really true that they leave their parents completely and follow their friends. I don't think it's so. When parents are present, they will gravitate towards you. All right? The other thing we do is that we keep emphasizing on the wrong things. Hey, how they're dressing to church. How they're dressing to church is not a problem if that is how they dress at home. Since you want them to dress a different way at home, then when they want to go to church, you want them to package differently. You're focusing on the wrong thing. Right? You're focusing on how they talk to the guest when you came. If you're doing your job, you won't worry about those ephemerals. You won't worry about how did you answer the auntie when she came. What did you say? Because you're dealing with if you deal with the root, the fruit will be taken care of. So we are making a lot of wrong emphasis. For example, my mom kept saying, whatever you do, don't get pregnant. The problem is not the pregnancy. People know how to take care of pregnancies. The problem is the many things that would happen without the child getting pregnant. No, what I mean is without the pregnancy showing up. God bless you, mama. So when you say whatever you do, like my mom had me when she was 19, so it was a big deal for me not to get pregnant. So that people don't say it's happened again. You get that kind of thing. So the emphasis was, whatever you do, don't end up pregnant. So I followed it. But this conference is not for the details of how much I followed it. Right? I just made sure I didn't get pregnant. The other part is that we are in denial. There is rape and molestation of children happening everywhere. But somehow, you say, God forbid. But God forbid is not a strategy. Saying it cannot happen to your child is not enough. Why can't it happen to your child? Do you know how many children get molested and they don't even know that's molestation? I was talking to a little girl the other day. And she started making an excuse about someone who touched her inappropriately. She said, maybe he made a mistake. Maybe he didn't really intend. Maybe he didn't do this. And I looked at her. But you know that's happening in almost every girl's head, including married girls. He hit her. Maybe I did something wrong. It's always somebody, it's always to cover up the person because we didn't get the right education. So, many parents are in denial that certain things can't happen in their homes, at least until it happens. So when you're in denial, you're sabotaging your kids. When you're in denial, it's not making you position strategically, provide information, provide the support they need. It just makes you think it can't happen, and then it happens. And then finally, we exaggerate normal behavior. A parent said that their child is growing hip, so it must be that she's having sex. Where did these parents come from? And then finally, we focus on academics alone. The average Nigerian parent, man of God, pays school fees, pays for lesson teacher, BANGWELL, we're done. Nothing else. There are no books. There's no critical thinking going on in that home. That child is not expressing themselves. We're not hearing their opinion. We're not hearing what they believe. And unfortunately, we are waiting to ship them. So you have children that can't express themselves, have not been holistically developed. Then you put them on an airplane and send them to the West. And then they send you an email that they're no longer girls, they're now boys. Or they're no longer boys, they're now girls. They had that thought while they were here, but they just didn't express it. And because they didn't express it, there wasn't conversation that would bring in another perspective. So they go out there and they're drowned in what they're hearing. But let me focus on academics alone. Now, I'm an educator, so that means I'm supposed to be talking about academics. But one of the things I know that interrupts education a lot is sex. Intelligent kids start having sex, their grades are messed up. Nothing comes together. It doesn't matter what their age is. Why did I say start having sex? No. Once they start tampering with different parts of their body that are private, they start getting messed up. I had a woman talk to me sometime in May about her little boy. Chris, I hope you got around to seeing that child. Somebody walked up to that boy and told him that men's penises are like pencils and the vagina is like a palm kernel. I don't get the mix. But that boy went on a spree to find out if it was true. And how did he do it? Lifting up the skirts of girls in school to confirm. The mother said he can't do homework, he can't do anything, including having another girl who said, don't worry, I'll be showing it to you. So once the teacher steps out, she opens her skirt for him to confirm if a woman's vagina is like palm kernel. And he didn't ask his mom. His mom has a vagina, doesn't she? If they have the right relationship, it will be, Mommy, is it true that a woman's vagina is like a palm kernel? And she say, no, it looks more like your lips. And the conversation is over. You didn't know. It's not hard. Maybe that's why we came here. So I will talk about how the conversation should be. It's not hard. Because once you say it's like lips, curiosity has died. They're seeing lips. And they're like, how can it be like your lips? So one time, my first child is 10. She had just entered the age for knowing what sexual intercourse is. And so the first time we told her, I knew it didn't sink. Because when your children they grow according to their age, and you don't expose them to things unnecessarily, you actually see the innocence that God puts in humans. So the first time I talked to her about sex, I saw the confusion like, you know that, what is a man's penis doing in a woman's vagina? That kind of look. So I knew it has not entered. I said, let me not go there today. She will come back for the conversation to be over. Then one day she walks up to me and said, all right, Mom, so it means that you were really an oven. We all came from Daddy, so you were just an oven. I said, perfect. I knew the conversation is coming. Then she turned and said, so what you're telling me now is you had sex twice. First to have me, and then my younger sister. Then I looked at her and said, baby, you have no idea. And she said, what do you mean? I said, baby girl, it is something that needs to happen regularly. And she said, what do you mean? I said, that's how God designed it. Otherwise, there has to be a difference between my relationship with your father and everyone else. God designed it for our companionship. Now, if you know my husband, you know why my daughter will be worried. She's like, no, Daddy can't do a thing like that. I say, you have no idea. But she didn't go to school to have that conversation. That's the point. Today I'm not talking about how educators are not handling those conversations. How a child asks a question in class and they label them as spoiled and nobody gets to answer that question. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about parents. So the next part of my conversation, which I'd like people to write, is that book smart is not always body smart. Book smart is not always body smart. And I'm going to tell you many ways that intelligent girls make dumb choices. Number one, a book smart kid has the ability to analyze a situation and not speak up in the middle of abuse. So this is how it can be. Empathy for the perpetrator. If I talk, Daddy will not be friends with him again, he will no longer come, I'm going to cause a problem for a relationship. Because they can think advanced. But also, the shock to say, I need to process this. So, 3 years ago, I told my mother for the first time that a music teacher that my grandpa loved molested me when I was 9 years old. And she said, she looked at me, and I saw she was shocked. She was shocked because when I was a child, they used to call me Radio Nigeria. Do you know what it means? I can't stop talking. My husband knows that when I stop talking, there's a problem. But Radio Nigeria didn't speak up. Just because your daughter hasn't told you or your son hasn't told you doesn't mean that nothing has happened. So that year was 1993. I was writing the state common entrance in Cross River State. At the same time, my school was planning a presentation. So they selected some of us to be in the music team and stuff. So this man sent for me, and I thought it was part of the rehearsal requirement. And I got to his office. It was a Saturday, so school is not on. I finished the exam, then he sent for me. When I got into his office, he called me in. He locked his door. I didn't get the message. And the next thing, he put his fingers into my vagina. I froze. Fortunately for me, by God, the security man of the school, they used to call him Etana. I like to use names so that people that remember that school can go and find out. That man's name was Mr. Eden. I don't know if he's in jail, I don't know. That security man came around, and as soon as that man came around and opened the door, I took off. I went home and didn't tell anybody. Actually, I didn't even know it was molestation until 5 years ago. Somebody was talking about being, I said, thank God I've never been raped. Then they started explaining what molestation was. I said, that incident. So when my mom came to visit, that's when I told her. Booksmart doesn't know that there's abuse. So you can't say that your A-lister child is smart. She's not. The other part that intelligent kids make dumb choices is that they choose irresponsible people, even in their circle of friends. Comfort. You know they're intelligent. So many times people look at them strange. So they do anything to fit in. They do anything for the happening kid to identify with them. So book smart is not body smart. And then they make terrible conclusions. You know, I was talking to one of the girls that I have been close to, a young, intelligent woman that I would vouch for in many cases. And I was just talking to her about boys one time. And she looked at me and said, she liked someone with a serious bad boy vibe. Most girls do. They know he's going to hit them. They know he's going to cheat on them. They like the adrenaline rush of being picked over other girls. That is dysfunction. Serious dysfunction. So I looked at her and I said, you don't mind it if it brings an infection? When I started giving her the other side, she said, but why do they seem so cool? I said, you have to choose above cool. That is sex education. As your children get older, there comes a time where that's what the conversation is. Because they're eventually going to date people. So you start preparing them for the values part of it. So where does this conversation go? Now you know how you could be sabotaging your child. So let me go to, why is my phone not working well, all right? So let me tell you what happens in the mind of intelligent kids. There's a complex mix of identity crisis, the need to be validated, ignorance of what is, and hormones. Puberty meets I want to be liked. You know, the teachers like them and the people don't. Their classmates don't. So it's a lot of things that is happening to one human being and parents are quiet. But my session today was not for intelligent kids alone. It was to tell parents that keep focusing that their child should do well at school to know that it's not enough. So let me tell you what happens when kids today are not getting sex education. Number one, gender dysphoria. It's until recently we didn't know that people can change their gender. Am I correct, sir? It was law. It's new information. But that's what happens when trusted people are not talking. People have concerns, they don't talk to the right channels, and they allow the people with an agenda to feed them, right? When we're growing up, I grew up with my uncles. My mom was an only daughter, so after she had me, her parents made sure I still went to school. Like, she still went to school. Nothing should interrupt her pathway. So I grew up with her brothers. So while growing up, I mirrored them during puberty. I like what he said, that you talk the way people you like talk. So I grew up with my mom's brothers, and so when I started growing up, I used to walk like a boy. I remember one time my pastor said I won't get married walking like that. 13 years, we've married, still walking like that. Now, 13 years ago, someone will say, girls who walk like boys are gay. True or false? And maybe I would have believed it, which is what is happening to kids today. They are responding to things happening in their environment, and someone who doesn't know them is helping them interpret it because parents are not talking with them. Do you understand? When we're growing up, if you knew a neighbor that had same-sex attraction, you just knew how to say, oh, this person, there's a problem. But now the world tells you that it is normal. Because the right people to talk are not talking. And when they talk, they're not talking about the issue. They're focusing on the ephemeral. They're not talking about the possibilities. There's a reason that person may be like that. That person may need help. Because we overly scream at the matter, this generation of children have high empathy quotient. The people you demonize, they fall in love with. So the answer is not in saying, that's the enemy. Once you say that's the enemy, because you've been harsh to themselves now, they start to think that you're the one that is not getting the right picture. You get the idea? And all of these things should be conversations that we have at home. We sit down and we talk through them, right? So today's kids are waking up to all kinds of feedback from everywhere. So even, I'm a Christian. I'm a God girl by God's grace. Even in church, people are saying, even if the rapture happens now and you're having sex, you're going to go to heaven. Because we've always made it about going to heaven. So now they've packed that going to heaven and they've turned it into something else. So when I talk to kids, I tell them it's really not about going to heaven. It's just that if your emotions start to control you, you will destroy you. So you will have your hell right here on earth. So it's not about what your pastor said. It's not about a God that is so big and he has a hammer conking everybody that is having sex outside of marriage. No, it's about you. What else? We don't know the impact of sexual abuse. As parents, I see parents who've been abused, also not offering sex education. And I'm saying, you don't understand it. You don't understand the impact of sexual abuse trauma. When trauma hits a person's system, it colors everything. There are men who can have normal sexual relations with their wife because of trauma. There are women who are paranoid. They're suspecting everything and everyone because they've not resolved it. And there are so many celebrities who are throwing away morality because they were abused. And nothing happened. There was no justice. Do you understand? Do you expect them to still say there's morality if a pastor they know or an imam they know molested them? The question is, where is the God at the time that I was molested? So when I go online and see them going off, I don't worry. My own is go inside, talk to my children, and get them to know that person has a reason. Unfortunately, when our children follow them, our children follow their map without understanding where they're coming from. That's why we need to go back home to talk with our children. All right? So what do kids need right now? And I'm wrapping up. Kids need trusted adults, talking to them, building relationship with them. Let them ask you questions, all right? Then they need friendship circles. For me, friendship circles are group of children that they are friends with, because you can't stop your children from making friends, right? But this is the trick. Let's say 7 of us in this room. Our children are friends. Now, if each and every one of us is talking to our children, they show up in their friendship circle with information they got from us. So they circulate only the right kind of information. If every time one of them brings something that is questionable, they go back to mommy or daddy to say, oh, Noye said this at school today, and there's correction, you preserve them within that friendship circle. Now, if there are 7 children and only one is talking to their parent, they will soon drown the voice of that one parent. So it means that all of us need to become an army that are talking to our children about sex from home. So if you're raising a 3 to 5 years old, a child within 3 to 5 years old, sex education is knowing their body part, right? Knowing what is private, knowing what is public, and even public learning about consent. Nobody should leave this African thing. People be kissing children on the mouth and be saying it is love. People be dragging children to hug them. We need to start asking, is it okay if I hug you? Let them be aware that there's body autonomy. People shouldn't touch you anyhow. But also, children need to become environmentally aware. Where are you? What situations do they find themselves in at 3 to 5 that they need to be careful of? At the playground, an uncle calls you, even if it's your teacher, just calls you to follow him like that. Carry somebody else along. It's about being body smart. You get into the toilet, you lock the door while you're in there and you come out. You want to go to the toilet, you're a boy, a female nanny wants to take you. You tell them no. So 3 to 5-year-olds should be taught how to clean their butt. Remove all the opportunities that people can use to abuse them. So don't just say, I've taught my child private and body parts. They need to be aware. They need to be aware when somebody is grooming them. Your neighbor can be grooming your children under your nose. Buy stuff for them, dust this for them, and they start to feel good. But a body smart child knows that this biscuit and sweet is not ordinary. So if you start telling your children that people abuse kids and this is what they do, they become extra alert when someone is giving to them. So for instance, my children know that when somebody is giving something and mommy says no, they can't throw a tantrum. You know? We visited their dad once and we're sitting down somewhere in his office, and a guy that has an office in the building, enclosed office, the guy is not like he's a bad person, right? He just came around and called one of them to come and walk inside with him. You know that I don't want to display my, you understand? I was about to say no, sir. And my daughter just looked and said, no, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. I said, jeez. I honor you before they will say I said something. She said, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. When the guy left, she now said, but mommy, why would he ask only me to come and stay there with him? That's being body smart. She can protect herself when you're not there. This sex education business is not what they do when you're there. It's what they do when you are not there. So you have a 6 to 8 year old. Don't worry, uncle, I'm coming. 6 to 8 year olds, opinionated beings. If you have a 6 to 8 year old, you should have observed that they started making connection with relationships. So they'll say something like, if your husband is calling, they won't say daddy is calling you, they'll say your husband is calling you. They're making connections with relationships that are appropriate. They are the ones that like to do daddy and mommy play under the duvet. So remove all blankets. Tell them, no under the duvet play. But also, that is the time to tell them what marriage even is. I tell the girls that are 6 to 8 that, girl, you're not married. That boy sitting next to you in your class is not your husband, I promise you. Because in their head, they have pictures of their wedding and fantasies. So by the time the boy touches her inappropriately, it's part of her fantasy. She doesn't even know what it is. So I tell her, marriage means that, you know the whole 9 years. Daddy came to my family and asked, and this and that. This is a long shot. Why am I telling them that? To establish to them that they cannot be married at 6 to 8. The body boundaries thing is bigger for them. But also I tell them something. That abuse creates injuries, physical and psychological. I used to sell them physical before. Then I realized that abuse can be pleasurable. And so I tell them that they can put a plaster on a physical wound. But psychological wound, we don't know how to heal it. So don't let anybody touch you inappropriately. You're 9 to 11-year-old. So for me, I don't tell 6 to 8-year-olds about sexual intercourse because of their hypersensitivity to fantasy. They can go to school and say, you know, you could be my husband. Come and let's try this. And it will be a problem. So for me, it's age 9 that you tell about sexual intercourse. That's because they're getting into puberty. Your children shouldn't hear puberty for the first time from their teachers. Teachers teach it academically for exam purposes, right? So you teach it relationally, right? This is how this works, this is how. So I tell them how the penis gets into the vagina. There's something the penis called a sperm. It gets into a woman's body, she gets pregnant. And then I tell them how much it costs to raise a child. Yeah. And the trauma, the bodily changes that happen in a woman and why she needs a supportive husband, which is why God wants you to be married to someone who is willing to go with you on that journey. So they start to see that connection, right? But at 12 to 14, you need to talk to your kids about more than that. You need to talk to your kids about abortions. Not how to have abortions, but about all the things they're going to hear from their classmates. That when you miss your period, some people are going to tell you there are pills. But this is what happens to those things. There's a data that says 5,500 teenage girls in Nigeria die annually trying to abort babies. Did you know that? So the one you saw in your neighborhood is the one that survived. You get the idea? So they are dying. HIV is high amongst them. They have high maternal mortality rate is very high. They die giving birth. Their babies die. But when their friends are telling them about those pills, they don't tell them that part. It is your responsibility to tell them those consequences. By the time your children are 15, they're about to leave home. So life happens. And we're preparing them for when they're going to date. Right? So for me, I tell children not to date till 21. Their life is not a car. They don't need to drive at 18. This particular life. Because puberty and the changes in their brain continues till they're 21. So the person they like today, they can't think it through. You get the idea? So let me end with this question that many parents always have. How many parents here have had their child tell them they have a crush on someone? If your child has not told you, they are on the 18th crush. They're on the 18th one. So having crushes is normal. If your child doesn't have a crush, I'll be really worried. They start having crushes around when they're 6. But when they're 6 to 8, it's not sexual. It's just a guy they like. Like if you have a daughter that always complains about a boy in class picking her water bottle, she's crushing. I just told you that for free. There's always something he does. How he picks the pencil is a problem. How he does, she likes him, full stop. But when they're 9 to 11, I tell them that the brain has started making connections with the opposite sex. God designed for us to be attracted to each other. So puberty essentially prepares the entire person for that experience. So your brain is going to like and disconnect, like and disconnect, like and disconnect. The trick is not to do anything enduring. And so I tell them that when they have a crush, they shouldn't talk to their peers. But I set you up. I told them to talk to you about it. If you like, tell them you've never had a crush. You know you're lying. So I tell my daughter, when you have a crush, talk to me. So when she talks to me, this is what I tell her. This is what you should tell them. Ask them what they like about the person. When they finish, tell them, is this what your teacher thinks about this person? What do other people think about this person? Because you're beginning to give them the framework of how this thing works. So it's not only what you feel about someone. Listen to what other people are saying about the person. So my daughter will go on. She knows the values that are important to us. And then finally, I tell them they shouldn't talk to their friends. I say, because your friends will be excited. So if you came to class and told your friend, Akin, I think I like Akin. They'll start telling her, there's a way he was looking at you. He picked your bag. He sat on your seat. All of those things fuel it. They make it last longer than it should. When my daughter had her first crush in school, she came home one day and said, Mom, I have a crush and we're thinking about getting married. She was 9 years old. She was 9 years old. I knew it was, so I was like, should I tell her? And so she came that day, her dad came home, he was eating. And she just hit him straight. Hey, Daddy, I have a crush at school. His name is this. And in my mind, I'm saying, Nigerian father, don't wake up today. And he looked at her and said, what's his name? I was calm. So when she left, I asked him, you were really calm, oh? He said, yes. Do you know when I liked my first girl in school? Reality. So the next thing I called her, I said, what do you like about him? She said, Mommy, he's honest. You know, he pushed down, listen, no, he pushed down the cupboard with people's lunch packs on it. But when my teacher asked him, he said it the way it happened. So number one, she still remembered that truth was a value, but she did not remember that he pushed down the shelf. Suspended perspective. So bottom line, when the crush was over, she came and told me, I don't like him anymore. I said, yeah, it's normal. So sometimes we come back from church and she says, Mom, I have another crush. So it's nothing. I'm just saying that to say, it is not a spiritual conversation. It's nothing. If you make it a big deal, they'll talk to their friends. If they talk to their friends, they're going to exaggerate it. So now if you're in this room, there's something that Dr. Vivian and a bunch of us are doing together. This year, she's opening up something called like an inner circle support, where she's taking parents on a conscious parenting journey. So part of what you get when you join that academy is that I'm going to handhold you through sex education, all right? So whatever you do, make sure you get to meet her and learn more about the academy. During my introduction, the intro said I have a bundle called the Body Smart Girl Bundle. I have it in the house today, and we are giving it away at a discount. But then I also have a book that every parent should have. The title is How to Talk with Your Girls About Sex. We look forward to meeting you at the stand. Thank you.
Amazing.